All right, James, what is today's question?
Today's question is, what relics of the past in your world shape the present?
Okay, that's a good one. In Dragongrin, we have a lot of lore about this sort of first great war that happened, like a lot of fantasy worlds, you know? The Titans, who were technological paragons of their age, versus the Primordials, which were sort of elemental beasts, clashed in this great war. The relics that litter the world, that are kind of that hand poking out of the ground or that crazy edifice, is basically just all the stuff left over from that war.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, that's sort of our ancient stuff. That's the fossils you find or things, they are there. Now, the beauty of that being, or this being rather a fantasy world, is unlike dinosaur bones or, you know, an old tools or something you might find from old culture. These have some sort of, they change the world in some way. They're magical or mystical or have some connection to these old magics that people don't understand. And I think we call those the machinations of the ancients.
Yes. And so, as far as what does that look like in our upcoming book, A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, we wanted to make it so that dungeon masters and players could really feel like they're finding something unique in the world. Mm-hmm. So we've created these two systems. They're very similar, but they're a lot of fun. And it's basically, in the book, it's called Machinations of the Ancients. And it's a series of roll tables where you can go through and find different pieces. It's very simple, but it's pretty cool. You can find pieces of old Titan tech and piece them together to make things. Drawing a lot of inspiration from things like Numenera.
Yeah.
You know, where it's that sort of old world feel, layers upon layers.
Cells within cells interlinked.
Cells within cells interlinked. So the idea is, and this is all obviously, you know, wet cement, but you can find a bauble, a contraption, or a relic. And so depending on what you find, a bauble is kind of like the Numenera, maybe like a one-use thing. A contraption would sort of be a little bigger, and then a relic is more like a magic item. But there are different conditions. Keeping it, again, very simple. It's either intact, fragmented, or salvage, which is like trash. So we're working on a very rough system, but the idea is that for now, two lesser things make one whole thing. Mm-hmm. So two pieces of salvage you can put together to make something that's fragmented. And that has a certain set of qualities. And it's all like roll tables and stuff. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it's roughly. It will be, it's just a little bit of a system, kind of, I wouldn't say outside of the normal game, but just a little bit of added on
is.
thing.
It's like a subsystem. It's like a side game almost.
It's an optional subsystem if you, in Dragongrin, either just your players kind of want to be explorers. It kind of gives a little more weight to that exploration pillar where the goal of the adventure could be to go find and use these things to learn more about the past or make really cool things, as well as just something that could happen occasionally and could start off maybe a quest chain. You know, you find something and you're like, oh, what is this? And you as a dungeon master can say, oh, well, this is from, you know, this war that this thing happened. And, you know, oh, you mentioned, you know, so-and-so back in town was asking if you could bring anything like this to them.
Sure.
It just gives the world one more dimension.
Yes.
And gives players and GMs a way to kind of tie things back to these Titans and Primordials and things that are happening. And I think it opens up a lot of really cool avenues, both in play and sort of in the overall story of the campaigns you can run in Dragongrin.
Exactly. Well said. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever played any like MMOs, like online games like World of Warcraft, but it's almost like their crafting system or their fishing or their professions, to where it's like this fun thing you can do.
Yeah, you can do it. Totally optional.
Totally optional.
Yeah.
So a rough, very rough wet cement example would be if you find a blade. Depending on what you rolled, it's either part of a blade, maybe just the hilt, or maybe just the blade, or an intact blade. And then, depending on its condition, it gets a simple property. Like, once per day, it'll allow you to find true north.
Yeah.
And those things would improve as you put more together because I think it would be cool to be like a Titan junker.
Yeah.
And you're roving the desert looking for pieces. You could do a whole campaign of just that.
Exactly. There are some places in Dragongrin where that's what they do. They salvage this old tech and make their livings selling it, putting it together. And so there's just a lot there, and I think it can make some really cool stuff.
And the alternate system is called the Bones of the Primordials, which instead of it being tech, you're basically using the different pieces and parts of these ancient creatures that are being unearthed, their bone powder, pieces of their teeth and stuff like that. And it's kind of like similar. Instead of objects, you make little potions, you make dusts and things that, again, have these cool magical properties. I just think that would be cool.
Yeah.
And so
I think one of them on one of the Bones of the Primordials roll table is Prison Hooch. I think a really good Prison Hooch.
But you have to have, this is where it gets kind of weird, you have to have the Titan toilet. You make it in the toilet.
The
you make
Titan
the prison
toilet,
hooch
but you
in
make
the
it, yeah. So.
And if the warden comes a knocking, you gotta say 86 the hooch. That's kind of the rule. Nah. But what about you? Specifically, what relics of the past in your world shape today, shape the present? We're really curious to find out.